So I want them to be able to really understand kind of the unit economics of it. So being able to understand, like, if I'm selling something, what are the economics to the business? If I'm selling this product A versus product B or a combination, how is that going to affect the business? I want them to understand, when I sort of talk about our objectives for the year, one objective for ours was increasing our gross margin. So like it was an objective across the board that everyone, even in our technology team, understand. And they're like thinking, okay, can we do things to help? Can we do things to drive revenue? Can we do things to kind of increase, that margin?
Welcome to the road to greatness. Get ready to be inspired and empowered to take your career to the next level. Let's talk about it.
Hi, I'm Carlin Kiefer, and welcome to the Road to Greatness. Hopefully, you'll be able to take something away, apply it to your own circumstances and sets, and help you get to your own great destination. One of the things that came out of season 1, you may recall, is that every single interview talked about mental agility, emotional agility, and resilience. All three are necessary components to becoming actually great at what you do. So, what does that look like? Well, it's different for everyone. And that's why we're interviewing as many experts as we can find to be able to share their version with you. If something resonates with you, please click like. If you want to hear more, please hit subscribe. And if you feel like you know someone who could probably benefit from a few extra tips and tricks, share. And with that, we're going to go to the road to greatness. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to this week's episode of The Road to Greatness. Again, I am your host, Carlin Kiefer. Cannot wait to introduce you to my next guest. So I'm excited to welcome Wiley Williams. She is the founder and CEO of So Hooked. We'll get more into the name in a moment. But BJ, thank you for joining. First, tell everybody about So Hooked. What is it? In its details, give them examples, and then we'll talk more.
Yeah, well, really excited. So Hooked is a wellness platform. As Carlin mentioned, kind of the biggest piece of our product is we built a rewards and incentive marketplace that's built exclusively with wellness products and experiences. So think anything from fresh food delivery service, athletic apparel, mental health, rest and recovery. That could be anything from spa, healthy food, kind of everything, across the wellness spectrum. And it's really designed for any time an organization wants to reward their population, whether it's their employees, whether it's their members, or incentivize their population, they can do it with a category that is in high demand, which is wellness. And so the way we've done that is we've aggregated different consumer wellness brands across the board. Some of those well-known brands like the Nike, the Under Armour, the Daily Harvests of the world. But we also work with a lot of emerging wellness brands, whether it's Somni Sleep, whether it's Tusol, kind of like leaders in their category, but maybe not household names. We've aggregated it in a way that, more people can have access to these products and experiences that really elevates people's mind, body, and soul. And so we do that through our incentive marketplace. And then, over the course of sort of building the company, we then decided to add sort of two complementary products. So we added sort of a piece around wellness programming. So we added wellness education. So we have both live and on-demand wellness webinars. So similar to how we aggregate different consumer wellness brands, we aggregate different wellness experts that talk about really lifestyle topics that range from anything from gut health to healthy tips to self-care for the busy professional. So really around a range of topics. And then we also have wellness challenges. So if there's a way that someone wants to get rewarded, we have a way of kind of putting that into practice and kind of building those healthy habits. So it allows us to be kind of a all-in-one solution or be able to kind of plug and play into different programs or initiatives that an organization might have.
Incredible. And so as I'm thinking about it, I'm hearing all of the offerings. One, most of our audience, or a lot of our audience, they are comprised of sales professionals, sales leaders, and the like. And what I'm hearing is also when sales teams and companies are trying to look for ways to reward their top salespeople, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even those who are repeated quota hitters, right? Yes, you want that President's Club. Yes, you want that President's Club trip, but you know, I know I used to work with someone a while back and he'd been on 10 different trips. And so he was kind of like, I don't really need to go on another one. Like, I'd rather just go spend time with my family. And so this is one of those alternative offerings, even that sales teams can use or companies can use to provide those rewards if something gets a little old and tired.
Exactly. So we a lot of companies use us for either incentives in some form or fashion, and you know, even whether it's sales incentives, whether it's incentives around doing something healthy, or whether it's an incentive around, you know, it really can be anything, right? Any sort of incentive. Anytime you would either give the sales trip or the Amazon gift card, think of us, right? And then organizations also just use us around appreciation, right? So, you know, just investing in their employees, appreciating their employees, making sure that they have access to wellness, whether it's a stipend at the beginning of the year or whether it's just, access to some sort of credit on our marketplace, just to kind of express like we value you. Service anniversaries, we do a lot of. And
So it
then
sounds like too, though, not to excuse me for stepping on your toes there, but I mean, one thing also worth mentioning is a healthier employee is often a happier, more reliable employee. So, right, doing that, yes, there's a reward component, but there's also a what's in it for me on the company side is, yeah, and if you're healthier and happier, like you're going to do better here and to make the business do better.
exactly. Yeah. So we really focus on productivity, engagement, like obviously well-being. And so, the value that we bring to the organizations that we support is really around, making them be able to compete and have the right talent and be able to engage that talent while they're there. And then, of course, keeping them as healthy as possible, like investing in their preventative health as much as they invest in their sort of clinical health, as we say. And so, that's we kind of are at the nice intersection of both like the employee experience, but also kind of well-being as a whole and kind of that preventative health as a whole.
Yeah, and one thing I'm noticing, albeit unintentionally, is that my season 2 of The Road to Greatness seems to be adding on and building on from season 1. And that is to say, if the last name Wiley sounds familiar to everybody at home, it's because we had your mom on in episode 3 of season 1 when we had Benny Wiley on. But so I know what good stock you come from an education, from a success, from a drive, from all the things. But give us an idea of what is your path to get here? You did not have a straight line. It was always a high achieving background, but give us, where'd you start and how'd you get here?
Yeah. I love that question because I think a lot of people's paths aren't linear, and it's nice to be reminded that you can be successful in so many different areas, and it doesn't have to be kind of you've been doing it for the last 30 years to kind of get you to the point of where you are today. I would say for my path, I always use compass, passion as my compass, right? And so, I really spent, my early career trying to bolster kind of those quantitative skills. I ended up working in financial services, loved kind of the platform and everything that I learned, but I realized I was not passionate about financial instruments. But really just gave me such a great foundation for a lot of even the work that I do today. I mean, from raising capital to just being able to think about the company from a profitability standpoint, thinking about our capital strategy, our investment strategy, like, our expense strategy. It's really is important to really have that kind of financial foundation. But a large part of my career after graduating from business school was in the hospitality industry. I've always been passionate about how experiences can elevate people's quality of life. And so I spent a fair amount of time both on the brand side, working at Starwood when Starwood existed. And then I also worked on sort of the investment side. I worked for one of Starwood's sort of top owners, where it was a real estate private equity firm. They owned exclusively hotels. and they owned and managed the hotels and really got to spend a fair amount of time kind of in the hotel hospitality side, before kind of making that entry point into kind of the wellness industry. And I would say what really kind of got me into wellness personally, wellness nerd, sort of fitness enthusiast sort of throughout my life. But at the time where I started getting more curious around kind of the business side of wellness was when a lot of the consumer wellness brands were coming more heavily on the scene. So you think of SoulCycle kind of building their brand experience. You think of Lululemon entering kind of the US market. They're a Canadian-based company. And a lot of what they were doing and a lot of what consumer wellness brands were doing is they were using hospitality touch points to differentiate their brand experience. But the other part of what they were doing is they were also getting people really excited about this lifestyle, about investing in their health, investing in sort of the things that elevate their mind, that elevate their spirituality, that elevate their mental health, right? But because it was this consumer luxury good, people like us had access to it, right? Like, so you and I, we could go out and get access to it. But a lot of people that look like us don't have access to it. And a lot of people, the majority of the world does not have access to consumer luxury goods because they're luxury, right? And they don't have disposable income, to really kind of get access to these high quality experiences and products that were changing people's lives. And so what I've, really sort of focused on with So Hooked is how can we sort of take the best that's out there? That's why we sort of aggregate different consumer wellness brands, put it all together because it's a very fragmented market, but then give more people access to it. And the way we've been able to give more people access to it is we brought it into the healthcare delivery model. And so that's why we partner with health plans like Aetna, United, Cigna, and others, to be able to kind of deliver it as part of their healthcare experience, or deliver it as part of their employee experience. And so really kind of democratizing access to the things that are really kind of changing people's lives in such a meaningful way, and not just their physical health, but really their mental health, and their spiritual health.
And we know that this is huge to Gen Z, right? And the number of articles that I read across a variety of publications talking about how Gen Z really is focusing on how they feel and physically and emotionally, how they feel, and looking for the job. And I think I even read a quote earlier today that said something about work your pay as opposed to work for your pay. And it was making sure that your pay is how you're getting paid is working for you. And I like this on so many levels because you hit like 4 different things, and I'm going to try and figure out how we get back to all of them. So one, it's keeping that employee engagement. So we talk a lot in the Road to Greatness about recruiting and retaining top talent. And so this is one avenue and one option, right, is providing that generation that feels more in tune with their own health and wellness, giving them the opportunities to do so. And then also you talked about differentiators, which in the world of sales, you have to be able to differentiate your product from everything else. And the uniqueness of going into the healthcare space, as opposed to just something that people can choose to do. You mentioned SoulCycle. I was one of the early SoulCyclers. And then we live in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. And my husband and I bought Peloton bike number 3 out of Tyson's Corner many, many, many years ago. And but you're right, that whole glam community energizing feeling around taking care of yourself becomes addictive. So
yeah, which is actually the name. It brings back, people always ask the name of So Hooked. It's exactly that point, Carlin. Like, So Hooked is like when you find that thing that gets you excited, I'm so hooked on this. Like, I am addicted. And when people like kind of have that aha moment, their face lights up, and then they're just like, they want more of it. They want more of it. And so we're just trying to give people access to those things that give them that light, give them that spark, or help to fuel the spark that they already have.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because and I'm not, it's interesting too, I should say. It's self-explanatory in the name, So Hooked. But I'm thinking about all of the things that you mentioned in terms of the different wellness programs and offerings and things that are available, because it really is something for everyone, because not everyone recharges or reboosts this in the same way. So that also becomes, again, another differentiator, because it is something for everyone in a way that's meaningful, right? And creates an impact there. Getting back to something else that you talked about, you did talk about being in the financial business and industry, and you talked about raising capital, which we're totally going to get into, because we do have folks who are in that startup space and are going to go through funding and or are looking for a buyer. But one thing that I listen to Mark Cuban almost all the time, and I've watched probably every episode of Shark Tank there is, et cetera. One of the things, though, that he talks about very adamantly is that everyone in business, regardless of where you are in the business, everyone in business should have some sort of financial background. And that doesn't mean that you had to go intentionally for that and then start a business, as much as it is go back to school, take a class, doesn't matter if it's community college, doesn't matter if it's, at Harvard or anywhere else, but learn the basics of business so you can learn all the things that you were talking about as it relates to raising money, doing your own books, understanding your own financial planning, et cetera. What does the business background for you, as you had to go through some of these things to get started, where did you find yourself? You were pulling this from education, and I'm sure you also pulled some from your brilliant parents, but we'll go from there as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I think, as we were just talking, like a lot about kind of the even just, understanding business model, right? Like understanding, like, does my business model match like our customer's business model, and therefore are we going to be, are we going to be in sync, right? Because if it doesn't match, then they might not be the right customer for us, right? And so everything that you do really, for the basis of a business to be sustainable, you have to have a strong business model. And basically how you make money, and will people pay, and will they pay enough to be able to cover the cost of your expenses, and to be able to grow a profit, and to be able to invest in the business. And so there's so much, just even on the financial side that I've learned. But it's interesting, because a lot of people think, and I think we've talked about it. I went to Harvard Business School, so a lot of people think I'm like I worked in financial services early on. I worked in private banking, so it's not like the same as investment banking. But I don't think in numbers, right? I think in words. And so what it's just had forced me to have to do is some things that maybe aren't as natural, but just really kind of getting into the weeds, and kind of like, I started, doing a lot of the modeling early on myself, really so that I could get comfortable and understand the drivers of our business and not have somebody else tell me. I mean, I knew it intuitively, but being able to like have that skill set of looking at it, understanding, being curious around it, and being like, oh, I didn't think that this was like how, I didn't think about this margin in this way. I didn't think about this in that way. I didn't realize, this is where we were gonna these are the levers that we're kind of building along the way. But kind of just getting really comfortable with like that, even if it's just the P&L statement, like, everyone should kind of have access to that. So, but
I'm going to stop you there though and come back, and for the people who are out selling for you and bringing in these incredible clients that you have and partners that you have, how much do they need to know, right? So you're thinking about you as the CEO, you as the founder, you absolutely need to know how to read your balance sheets and know your P&L and all the things, because you need to make sure that you're profitable and you're staying in the black, so to speak. But your salespeople, right? They don't need to be that aware of all of it. What is the important part of operating the business that you want them to be prepared with, that you want them to know and understand, both on your end in terms of So Hooked's business, but also the business of your customers?
yeah, so I actually do want them to know a lot, right? And they might need to know everything kind of I would say on like the first half above sort of like the gross profit, looking at gross profit, right? So I want them to be able to really understand kind of the unit economics of it. So being able to understand, like, if I'm selling something, what are the economics to the business? If I'm selling this product A versus product B or a combination, how is that going to affect the business? I want them to understand, when I sort of talk about our objectives for the year, one objective for ours was increasing our gross margin. So like it was an objective across the board that everyone, even in our technology team, understand. And they're like thinking, okay, can we do things to help? Can we do things to drive revenue? Can we do things to kind of increase, that margin? Even if that's not their role. So I do want people to kind of understand how we make money. Like that's critical, right? You're
So they're
selling.
not also giving away the store, right? The
Yeah,
salespeople, the first thing they want to do oftentimes is discount, right?
exactly.
No, that does not bring a
Exactly.
greater margin.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always that tension, right? And like, I think, blending kind of that hospitality mind of like, okay, we're gonna lean in and like to service. We're gonna lean into some things. We're gonna build credibility in the market. You mentioned that we work with we work with some Fortune 100 companies, right? We need to make sure that like their margin for error is really small, and so we need to come in making sure we're on our P's and Q's, and also making sure that like there might be some things that we do, that we might give service wise as a discount. But that doesn't mean that we can like lose money on like, every time we like go out and sell. And we want our sales team to be able to explain to a customer like why we charge what we charge and the value that we're bringing to them. And so that's critical of like, these are why there's cost involved in it. It's like, I mean, most people don't expect things for free. And I think it's just like you said, it's like, it's almost like, oh, we need to give it away for free. They're not going to buy, especially if it's a new product. It's like, we're just going to give it away, give it away, give it away. But I think the good salespeople are the ones that are like, no, this is like what it takes to kind of build this value. And this is why you need it. And this is the investments you need to make so that you can get the ROI on the kind of the back end.
Huge, huge, huge. The magic word, value, value, value. Keep adding value, adding value, adding value before you think to discount. Add the value in that. I want to make sure that we have the opportunity because you have done something that we haven't discussed a fair amount here, or actually haven't discussed at all in the Road to Greatness, which is going after doing fundraising as a startup. Right. And you've been through, I know you had an informal round. So can you take us through the informal round and then also your formal round and then where you're headed? And I've got a couple of follow-ups there. So I'm going to let you go.
Yeah. So I even piggybacking on like the last question of like, where do you extract, from education? Like, I mean, so much of learning, like even raising capital is about just like leadership, confidence, like being able to communicate, like all those things that are, some people might say soft skills. Those, we talked about the finance skills, but the soft skills are just as important in the business, both from
Yes.
a capital perspective as well as a leadership and, CEO perspective. So I just wanted to make sure that as someone who is not, driven fully by the numbers, having, having the right sort of team and having the right leaders in place and having, systems in place are equally as important to making sure that you have a strong business model for sustainable growth. So I did just want to touch on that.
I love that you say that because one of the things that my customers talk about with pro tip partners, or I notice that when I work with startups, sometimes the skill development that they want isn't necessarily teach my people how to sell as much as it is teaching those presentation skills, teaching them how to communicate value, teaching them that part of things, but also on the leadership side, it's getting them to be able to communicate so that when they do go through funding, and going through their funding rounds, or some who are positioning themselves to get bought, that they actually can do those media interviews, that they can do those broader, high profile public communication settings to be able to position themselves for the next big thing. So I know I took you off track a little bit, but I want to get back to the question, because you are going, and comes back to the soft skills of being able to present, communicate the value. What are you going to get for your investment in me? And so hooked, because you're selling yourself and your company when trying to bring in money. So talk to me about your fundraising rounds, the informal and the formal.
Yeah. So, early on, and everyone thinks about capital different, and every business you have to think about capital differently, like really kind of how it fits with the overall strategy. So, I was someone that I was lucky enough, I had, worked in private equity. I had a bunch of savings. So like the early money that went into the business was actually my money, mine and my husband's money. Like we invested before even taking like family money, right? Like, like we invested, and I kind of said, who not better to invest in than myself, right? Like I can control myself. I might not get to like it might not work out, but at least I'm investing in something that I care about. And I had, and I have to say, I was definitely a luxury to be able to do that. And also a luxury that I also had a really supportive husband that, when early on, when I was like, I'm not going to draw a salary, I'm not going to do those things, like we had a support system, right? Like I was not going to be living on the street. And I think it's important for founders or people who are taking capital to kind of recognize where there's advantages and when they're, because every situation is not the same. And so people have to do what works for them and also what works for the business. So early on, we were able to raise, so I started taking the first kind of outside capital I took was from accelerators. So we had an accelerator in the healthcare space that we were accepted to early on. And then that allowed me, same time I did that, I actually did a friends and family round around that because it was so easy in the sense that we had terms, we figured out the terms, we figured out the structure. It wasn't, we were able to kind of do it around kind of one round of being able to kind of collect like that capital, that early capital, like after we had already kind of invested our capital. And, there was an outside partner also coming in. So it also gave it different credibility than just saying, hey, I just want a friend, because I wanted to be able to show different proof points, and being able to get into an accelerator was a proof point of like, hey, people who do this day in and day out see the value in kind of what we're creating. And it helped with sort of the friends and family angel investors that kind of came in. And so then we actually did a few different accelerators and didn't take outside capital every time we did it, but we did a couple other accelerators and got some grants that allowed us to kind of get to a certain point. And then it was kind of like, and it actually got us to the certain point where our sales we were actually profitable, right? Like what you want in a business. And so
Yes.
that and being profitable and having just a little, those like accelerators, I was able to really invest back into the business. I was able to really, and I took, a lean salary. We were able to hire some people there. We did some exchange for equity, or they, for reduced salaries. And so we were able to be kind of really capital efficient. And not take a lot of outside capital. And then we decided to do an institutional round that, kind of where I was like, okay, the business, if we want the business to grow to the next level, if we really want to invest in our product, if we really want to invest in kind of the right set of people for the next stage of growth, then we, and to be able to grow the team, or to be able to, pay the team that we like, what we want to pay the existing team, we're going to have to kind of elevate and, get some outside capital. And so, kind of going to that process, like the outside capital process is very similar to a sales process. You kind of identify who your targets are. You figure out where there's fit, every sort of institutional investor has some sort of thesis of like where they invest, how they invest. And they want to invest along their thesis because, they have investors that have invested in them and they have to show a return. And so you really look for that alignment. And then it's just a bunch of pitching, right? A bunch of, kissing a lot of frogs.
Hopefully emerging without too many warts.
No actual kissing.
Yeah, no, I get
it. In this day and age. Um, but you know, a lot of conversations to kind of get to yes. And I think, you know, one of the best parts about it is people are like, you're never gonna know who's actually gonna say yes. Like it's always gonna surprise you of like who's gonna want to be the one to really lean in. And you know, it was true. Like, you know, I did not like our lead investor, I did not have a relationship with the managing partner before I sort of started going through their investment due diligence process, like, you know, but I was like, we connected and I saw the value that they could bring, you know, real strategic value and strategic capital. That's always, I think it's important to, you know, especially in sort of the venture space, you're always looking for strategic capital, you know, people that can kind of help fill a skill set or help give you perspective or, you know, on you know, industry trends, help, you know, give you access to better talent. So it's like really important to kind of have that strategic capital, which is different than like even like the PE space or even, you know, you where you might just like the strategic capital just might be the capital itself. And you know, so it's just really making sure that you're getting the most out of the investment that you know, both sides are making into bringing on additional partners.
So let's get back to those proverbial frogs and the fact that for me, and one of the things that I work on with sales folks and also with the sales leaders on helping and coaching them to be more resilient and coaching their teams to be more resilient. One of the things we talk about a lot is you can't get emotionally attached to every single deal that you're trying to go after. And whether that's the investors, as you mentioned, or whether that's a customer, talk to me about how you work your own feelings of resilience, how you also coach your sales teams when they go out. What are the things that, hey, they got knocked down today, but how are you picking them up and putting them back in the game?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is hard, right? Like, and especially for raising capital and being a founder, right? Like, and being early, like so much of what people say they're investing in is you. And how do
Right.
you not, you know, take it personally when somebody says no? I think the biggest way of sort of being resilient is really understanding what no means. And oftentimes, you know, 9 times out of 10, the no has absolutely nothing to do with you. It could either be a no because it's bad timing for them.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a no because you're not and you don't align with their thesis. It could be a no
Right.
in the sense that there's another portfolio company that's there's overlap and they can't afford to have overlap within the portfolio. It could be a no for there's so many hosts of reasons that it could be a no for. Now, probably similar to sales is like when somebody tells you a quick no, that's amazing because it's like it's almost as helpful as a quick yes, right? I mean,
Win
obviously we
fast,
all want
lose
the yes.
faster. Look.
Yeah, exactly. The quick no's are it's the drawn out no's
Yes.
and that are harder. And I think with time you just get better at reading it and also better at like being like, where do I invest my time? Look, if they're not interested, they're not interested. If they're not moving, and since I've got to put my effort in I've got to find the people who are interested now and who are in an ability to kind of move and that convert, you know, whether it's a
Mhm.
investment conversion or a sales conversion. And so it's just a very parallel type of process to a sales process. And I think when you think of like a sales process, right, it's like it's not about the product, it's not about the team, it's not, you know, like sometimes you have to listen to those insights and maybe the product is not at the state where that it's going to service them today where they need to be serviced, or maybe it
Mhm.
is the communication and the value, or maybe it's just like they're just not the right customer for you, and then it's finding the right customers and then really honing in on those customers that really get the value. You don't have to educate them, and they want to kind of grow with you. So, I mean, actually, that's interesting when I think about it. And I remember like talking to an advisor, and you know, clearly in healthcare, like you know, even in the you know, there's like the provider side, and then there's the carrier side, and so we
Mhm.
partner on the carrier side, like the insurance companies. And, versus more on the provider side, we support the provider side. They're actually our customers, but
Right.
our customers in a different way. But, where we're, but the health plans are the ones that are our customers. We're supporting their members versus the provider side are the ones who are supporting their employees. And I remember, talking to an advisor, and it goes back to business model, right? And he was just like, and when I told him we were talking to a hospital network, and he was just like, I don't see it. Like, and he wasn't being like negative, he wasn't being supportive, but he was like he's like, how does a hospital make money? And you're like, sick people, right? Like,
So I'm feeling like they're not going to be feeding into your base all that much.
I mean, we support the people who work at hospitals, so we have plenty of hospitals that we support. But he was just sort of
Right.
like, how do you make money? Like, and then flip side, on the carrier side, how do they make money, right? So they make money on, basically that risk of like paying out claims, of like they take a premium, and if they can keep more of that premium versus having to pay it out in expenses and claims,
Right.
then, and of course preventative health keeps people from, paying out claims. It's a much better like alignment from a business model perspective of a partner
Mhm.
than a hospital network. And not to say that it couldn't happen in either way. It just was, this is an early conversation when we were trying to figure out fit, and we were trying to go different paths. And it was like, it brought it back to the economics, right? It brought it back from the sales to the economics. And it's like, are we aligned in what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And are we aligned in kind of bottom line? And if like those two things, if we can find that alignment, then the sale is going to happen. That fit's going to happen.
That's what I absolutely love. You've given the perfect case for why you need an ideal customer profile, why you need the ideal investor profile, certainly if you're in the startup game, but also just being so in tune with, and I forgive me that I keep putting the sales piece on you, but really when you're fundraising and you're looking for investors, you are in fact selling, as you mentioned, right? So there's also the piece on understanding the operation of your business and how your customers make money. And
Mhm.
so when you're going after someone, if you are selling something that is not in a line or in alignment with how your customers are making money, that's a much harder sale. Or certainly you need to get more creative about how you're positioning it. And that's one thing I think, um, getting back to how important it is to really understand not only your business and your product, but your customer, your market, how they make money, and really having a much broader look, understand the business acumen on top of everything else when you're in the sales process. We have
Can I
just,
just say something
oh,
about that?
absolutely.
Like, just in terms of sales, right? You just made a comment of like, you maybe have to like pivot in terms of how you sort of show value. So for the
Hmm.
hospitals, we were able to pivot, and how they became, one of our largest customers. It was big hospital network, and the way we were able to pivot is around, um, you know, they've got a lot of frontline employees. They've got a lot of people that are working crazy hours. There's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of it's a lot of people exiting kind of like the nursing field. So like retaining top talent, keeping people happy, keeping people healthy. And a lot of the mission of a hospital is around like health. So there was a lot of alignment in it. Like, we're gonna give people appreciation, if we're gonna give them incentives like for nursing week or this or service anniversaries, we want to make sure that we're doing it in something that we actually value, but
Hmm.
do it in a way. And then for the economics, it works for our bottom line because we can keep the talent and engage the talent and that we do have. And so it's just kind of shifting that value play based off of the type of customer that you have.
Yeah, that's so important. So great. And it actually was anticipating my next question, which was going to be to talk about the pivots. I will just close the last thought off, though, and just say how important it is. Just, I think we've all learned in post-COVID era how important it is to take care of the caregivers. And so the fact that you were able to pivot and make that the thing also is super important and valuable. So you anticipated the next question, which was going to be around pivoting. And can you highlight just where specifically where the pivots have happened that allowed you to make larger leaps, right? And if you didn't pivot, you were going to make slow growth, but you pivoted. So then, hey, this then huge or even bigger thing happened.
Yeah. So like one of our pivots early on was around product, right? Actually a couple of pivots around product where initially we had just our marketplace. And even initially, like we thought you know, it was only going to be used for health. Our incentive marketplace was only going to kind of be used for like the healthcare angle of like someone's doing something healthy, we're rewarding them with something healthy, and really being part of like that wellness delivery model. And not to say that we don't do a lot of that, right? And not to say that that's not a great use case. Whether it's someone getting their flu shot, someone doing a fitness activity, someone, eating healthy, all the things that you want them to do. But I think what made the product great or even like the strategy great is like, we really are so, we're so much greater than health. Like people want, wellness, and it's a high demand category. And so just opening up, like being so open to hear other use cases, that it's around just purely like sales incentives. It's around that, and so just being like, this is how people want to use us. People can use us in so many different fashions, and making sure that we're being really open around that and kind of how we built out our product and also how we built out our communication. I would say the other pivot around product was, we were also only an incentive marketplace. And then we realized, we had to have some programming because we actually kept getting requests from customers. They're like, I want to use your incentives, but I don't have enough. Like, I don't know how to figure out how they should be incentivized. Can you help me with that? Can you help me with can you help me with, I want to do these webinars like that are around wellness lifestyle. It's not, I want to complement what the insurer is providing. And so, just being able to lean into those insights, lean into being able to say, okay, oh, we can do this. This is something that we have access to, this information. We can easily put this as a product, and those kind of adjacent products, come from kind of listening and being open and kind of hearing what people actually want. And similar with our challenge product, we had started off with a challenge product early on, kind of like sunsetted it and then like brought it back in a very different way. And so, just really being open to, I think, just listening.
Huge. And I say all the time, and I beat the drum nonstop about how important it is if you are a leader, whether it's a sales leader, a business leader, if you are a leader, period, if you are not listening and you stay in your echo chamber and your idea is the only idea that matters to you, and it's more about getting your team to say yes and follow the instruction rather than actually listening to the market, listening to what your customers are saying. And certainly, as I'll add on that, just to say that as we're getting to the year end, this is the time that most businesses should be doing start, stop, and continue. That whole exercise around what's working, what's not working, what needs a tweak. And a lot of people just are so stuck in doing it the way they've always done, or doing it the way that the one person at the top said so, rather than listening to the market. So kudos for being able to pivot and move. And the other piece that you mentioned that I want to make sure I call out is, you didn't say the actual words of being a trusted advisor to your customer, but the scenario that you provided was really about being open and listening to be able to collaborate with a customer so that you do develop that win-win. Right? It is something that they actually need. You're not just going, well, this is the offering here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, it's just like, and we created our product to be very configurable, to be able to like, be like, okay, there might be a use case that we had not thought about, but being able to kind of support, or if there's something where you're like a feature that we could build in where we have 80% of it, like we're like, we can get you there. It might not be tomorrow, but like we can work to kind of get there together. And so, yeah, I mean, we really, you know, I'm a collaborative person, so that's something that I value from a leadership perspective. And I designed the company, you know, when the value of like, you know, like this ecosystem is big, but we're just like, we have to be collaborative in it so we can all kind of come together. And my like business philosophy is very much win-win, like win-win-win, like every party needs to win. It's not a win-lose, like not everybody shares that philosophy, but that's something that's really important to me. And so that's how I kind of treat our partners, treat our customers, treat my teammates, treat kind of like all the different, our investors, our stakeholders, like we all need to win. So let's figure out together how we're all going to kind of win in this equation.
Absolutely. So great. Such good stuff. And unfortunately, we're getting to the end of our time together. But before we go, I have to ask you the same thing that I ask everybody else. What did I not ask you that I should have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you asked a lot. I think, you know, I think if there's anyone out there that's like thinking about entrepreneurship, I would say just do it, right? Like just jump in. There's never going to be a great time. You don't have to do something big on day one. Just start talking to people, start testing your idea, just start, you know, getting some of those early insights. And then just believe in yourself, right? So much of this game at listening is really important, but just believing is also really important too. Like knowing when to kind of listen to yourself as much as you're listening to external information. And so kind of those are the two themes that I would say are important.
Excellent. And thank you for giving me validation for my own entrepreneurship with Pro Tip Partners and getting out there and doing all the things you've just said in terms of listening to myself and the market to make sure that we're getting there and doing what we need to do. BJ Wiley, thank you so much for all of the insights that you've shared, everything from the importance of being curious, the importance of pivoting, the importance of listening, also the importance of really understanding business, having your business acumen. And that's wherever you are in the organization, whether you're in sales, whether you're in customer support, whether you're in sitting in the big girl chair at the top. But really understanding the inner workings is critical to making sure that you actually pave your road to greatness. Once again, BJ Wiley Williams, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you joining us and sharing all of your insights. And we hope that we've inspired more folks to step out on that ledge and be entrepreneurs like we are.
Thank you so much.
Did you hear something you liked? Tell me about it at Carlin RTG Podcast on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Thanks for joining.